And we got in the car and we went to the hospital. When we got to the hospital, they took her away. They took her and my baby away from me. And I was sent off somewhere else, and I had to assert myself back into the system. When that birth happened, I lost a connection with her that I never regained.
The father is completely disempowered. And, that's kind of where we lose it. That's where we've lost not only our masculinity, but also our identity as fathers.
And it happens over and over and over again. And it's one of the things that contributes to the demise of our family system. There's lots of things that contribute to that, but that's one of the things it contributes to.
Kimberly had just given birth. There was still a doctor in the room, and there was still a nurse in the room, and I think that Kimberly's mother had come in the room, and I think my mother had come in the room, and we were sitting on the bed, and we were new to this, we were just as new as the baby was outside of the womb. But it was overwhelming to me, and I actually left the room. And I left Kimberly in the room, and I left my daughter in the room, and I went down the hallway, and I found an apartment emergency door in a utility hallway by myself, and I sat on these cold concrete stairs covered in traction rubber and put my hands in my face, and I wept, And I don't even know if it felt right at the time. One thing that I've always battled with, and that Kimberly's brought up multiple times in that 4 years, is that I did leave the room. She did feel it as an abandonment, which is an ongoing struggle in our relationship. It's one thing that I go over, I guess it was a regret.
This is so important. This is what happens to people in the hospital setting in particular, because you guys go home with this wounding between you, blaming each other for the lack of responsiveness or whatever, the violation or whatever happened between you, when actually it was done to you.
Yeah.
It's the system that we have to start being angry at.
Kimberly and I, we look for a lot of information, and I have been at screenings with you of movies that talk about what the system has done upon us, but there's still that part of me that wants to have the ego like, oh, I didn't let the system do that to me, or it wasn't done upon me, I made the wrong choices. You know what I'm saying? But just as you said that to me, it kind of washed over me that is kind of a reality. Because you paired that right next to the going home with things that we blame on each other and resentments across our sectioned resentments across the board, segregated in our strongholds of these resentments from the same thing. And Kimberly and I have never worked through those, and one of those things was that Kimberly and I had talked about her not getting an epidural. And one of my things was supposed to be that I was supposed to help her remember not to get that epidural, but I'll tell you what, she ended up getting an epidural with our first child.
So this issue of separation and disconnection, it's not the mother's fault, it's not the father's fault that he leaves, it's the culture that we've destroyed. The village, extended family, tribe, the basic human context in which children should be born has been lost. And the consequences of that are enormous. And one of those facts is that fathers aren't sticking around once their kids are born, and that we have enormous number of problems from depression, violence, addiction, chronic illnesses, fundamentalism. There's a whole list of things that I believe are a result of this fundamental disconnection. I like to say that the currency of wellness is connection. And all of my work in wellness, when I look back on it, has to do with the quality of connection.
And there's always been a part of me that wanted to resent her for making that choice, but looking back on it and remembering, it was hard not to make that choice, because there are parts of the system that prey on you in a time of need. Part of our entire medical system is to prey on people in a time of need.
So what happens is that the men born like this, disconnected men like myself, we grow up looking for the mommy we never had. If we're lucky, we find her and marry her, and we think everything's okay until she has a kid. And then, even though she has similar wounding from growing up the same way, though she probably wasn't circumcised, that's a major difference with the males, she also has the biological connection with the child from carrying it in her body. And if she nurses it, that continued biologic connection, which should go on at least 2 years, which doesn't usually, but that's the norm for what humans were designed for, more than 2 years. And the better she connects with the child, the more she heals her own wounding, and the harder it is for the dad who is seeing what he didn't get. His childhood wounding is re-stimulated, ripped open, and his defense mechanism usually is to leave, either to leave emotionally, psychologically, like my dad did, or to leave physically. And we know there's a high rate of separations and divorce after children are born. And I believe this all can be traced back to this male postpartum abandonment syndrome.